talk emergency repair.
Yeah, can I get the police?
You need an ambulance?
Bring the ambulance, the police down.
A lawyer is sentenced to life in prison Thursday for shooting to death a woman and her daughter. Nova Henry was a former girlfriend of ex-Chicago Bulls player Eddie Currie.
Nova Henry's story is one of love, betrayal, and tragedy, unfolding across the backdrop of the Chicago legal system and the city's basketball scene. It's a heartbreaking tale that gripped the public's attention in 2009, revealing the dangers of domestic violence and the severe consequences of manipulation and obsession. Nova Henry was a young woman from Chicago with a promising future and deep ties to the basketball community. Born in 1981, Nova was the sister of basketball star and former NBA player Darnell "GB" Henry. She grew up in a family passionate about the sport, but her path would be marked not by basketball fame, but by a tragic end that shook her loved ones and the city. Nova's life took a pivotal turn when she became romantically involved with Eddie Currie, a former NBA star who played for the Chicago Bulls before being traded to the New York Knicks. Their relationship began in the early 2000s when Currie was a rising star in the league, and it resulted in the birth of two children, Ava, born in 2005, and Noah, born in 2007. Although Currie and Henry were never married, their lives were intertwined as they co-parented their two children. However, their relationship was fraught with complications. At some point, Nova began a romantic relationship with her lawyer, Frederick Goings, who would later be at the center of the horrifying tragedy. Frederick Goings, a lawyer from Chicago, had been hired by Nova Henry to help handle a custody dispute between her and Eddie Currie. What initially began as a professional relationship soon turned romantic, with Goings becoming increasingly entangled in Nova's personal life. This relationship, however, was anything but stable. Their relationship was marked by increasingly erratic behavior from Goings. As the custody case progressed, his feelings of ownership and control over Nova intensified, especially knowing that she still maintained a connection with Eddie Currie because of their children. This led to growing jealousy on Goings' part. Goings had a history of being controlling and obsessive, as evidenced by Nova's growing fear of him. After Nova broke up with him, she began to take legal steps to distance herself from him, including filing for an order of protection. Goings, enraged by her attempts to separate from him, became consumed by a need to reassert control. When Nova rejected him for good and expressed a desire to move on with her life, it triggered a fatal obsession in Goings, culminating in the brutal murders. On the night of January 24, 2009, Frederick Goings drove to Nova Henry's apartment on South Prairie Avenue, where she lived with her two children, Ava and Noah. He entered the building just before 6:00 p.m., and within a short time, he carried out the murders. Nova Henry was found shot multiple times. She had been shot in the head, neck, and body, indicating a violent attack fueled by rage. Her daughter Ava, who was only 10 months old at the time, had also been shot in the head. The fact that Goings killed not only Nova, but also her innocent child, shows the extreme and irrational nature of his anger and need for vengeance. His willingness to kill a defenseless infant suggested he did not just want to hurt Nova, he wanted to erase her life completely. A critical detail in the case was that Noah, Nova's 3-year-old son with Eddie Currie, was left unharmed. While Noah was present during the murders, Goings did not harm him, which raised questions during the investigation. Some have speculated that Goings spared Noah because he wasn't the child of Nova's new boyfriend, and possibly Goings viewed him less as a threat to his delusional need for control. Others believe that in his twisted state, Goings saw Noah as less of an obstacle. After the murders, Goings fled the scene, but his attempt to evade responsibility would be foiled by the detective work that followed. Chicago police launched an immediate investigation after Nova Henry and her daughter were found dead in their apartment by Nova's mother, Yolanda, who had come to check on her after not hearing from her for hours. It was clear from the start that this was not a random crime. It had the hallmarks of a personal attack, given the multiple gunshots and the brutal nature of the killings. Detectives focused early on suspects who had been close to Nova. One of the first breakthroughs in the case came when detectives reviewed surveillance footage from Nova's apartment building. The footage revealed Frederick Goings entering the building around the time of the murders. He had been captured on video both entering and leaving the building, wearing a black coat and gloves. This footage placed him at the scene and became a critical piece of evidence. Inside Nova's apartment, investigators found clear signs of a struggle, with blood spatter patterns that indicated Nova had fought back against her attacker. Ballistic evidence played a crucial role, as bullet casings recovered from the scene were later matched to a firearm owned by Goings. The murder weapon was traced back to Goings through a meticulous forensic investigation. He had tried to dispose of the weapon after the killings, but detectives were able to connect the gun to him through a combination of ballistics and other forensic tests. Investigators determined that the bullets used in the murders came from the same gun Goings had purchased. Phone records also helped solidify the case against Goings. Cell tower data indicated that Goings' phone had pinged in the area of Nova's apartment around the time of the murders. Further analysis showed that Goings had repeatedly tried to contact Nova in the days leading up to the killing, with an increasing frequency that suggested he was stalking or monitoring her movements. His calls and text messages became more aggressive and threatening, further illustrating his growing obsession. Once Goings was identified as the prime suspect, detectives brought him in for questioning. During the initial stages of the interrogation, Goings denied any involvement in the murders. He claimed he had been elsewhere during the time of the killings and that he had not seen Nova recently. However, as detectives presented the mounting evidence against him, surveillance footage, phone records, and ballistics, Goings' story began to unravel. The pressure of the interrogation exposed cracks in his alibi, and although he continued to maintain his innocence, the overwhelming evidence pointed to him as the perpetrator. Detectives noted his evasiveness and inability to provide a consistent timeline of his whereabouts on the day of the murders. Frederick Goings was arrested and charged with the murders of Nova Henry and her daughter Ava. The trial that followed revealed the chilling details of Goings' obsession with Nova and the violent outburst that led to her death. Prosecutors argued that Goings had become consumed by jealousy and anger after Nova ended their relationship, leading him to commit the heinous crime. During the trial, testimony from Nova's family and friends painted a picture of a woman who had been trying to escape an abusive and controlling relationship. Nova's family expressed how she had been fearful of Goings and had taken steps to protect herself and her children, but in the end, those measures proved tragically insufficient. Goings' defense team attempted to cast doubt on the evidence, but the weight of the physical evidence, including the gun and surveillance footage, was overwhelming. Prosecutors laid out a narrative of a man who had become obsessed with his ex-girlfriend, a woman who was trying to move on with her life and protect her children. Goings, consumed by jealousy and anger, had murdered Nova and her daughter in cold blood after she rejected him. The prosecution used the surveillance footage, ballistic evidence, phone records, and witness statements to paint a clear picture of Goings' guilt. In addition to the physical evidence, prosecutors highlighted Goings' history of controlling behavior and his efforts to manipulate Nova during their relationship. They demonstrated how Goings had gone from being Nova's lawyer to becoming her stalker and ultimately her killer. In February 2013, after a month-long trial, Frederick Goings was found guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder. In April 2013, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.